Friday night in Mason, Ohio looks safe. Paper lanterns, leftover cupcakes, kids dragging sticky pumpkins. But safety ended when my 8-year-old squeezed my hand and whispered, "Gran, don't drink the cinnamon tea. Don't sign the gray folder. The lady with the stamp comes at 9. My name is Nora Jean Harper. I'm 70, sharp as a tack, and I still balance my checkbook to the penny. Tomorrow, according to someone else's plan, I'd be sleepy. A notary would arrive, and my name would slide off my own deed. That's when I changed the plan. I drove to the Bluebird Diner, the one place in town where fear can't hear itself think, borrowed a clean phone and called people who leave footprints, a notary with a spine, and a sergeant with a camera. By morning, there would be photos of a gray folder thick with tabs, a mug that smelt wrong, pink powder dusted near the rim, and a knock at my door that didn't sound like family. It sounded like accountability. If you've ever wondered how fast a kitchen can turn into a courtroom, watch closely. And if you've ever needed permission to say no before you sign, take mine. This isn't a story about memory care. It's a story about care and the difference between help and control. Keep your eyes on the gray folder. At 9 a.m., everything tries to change. At 9 a.m., I don't. I didn't go home. I steered the Buick to the Bluebird Diner off Route 42 like it was a safe house with neon trim. The bell over the door chimed, and the smell of bacon and hot sugar wrapped around us. Marcia, who has run that diner since before I retired, looked up from the register and raised an eyebrow that could slice bread. She said, "Ellie." Only people who've known me more than 30 years call me Ellie. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Close," I told her, "because what do you call it when a child describes a trap in the kitchen you thought you knew?" "I need 2 things, coffee and privacy." Marcia poured 3 cups, one for me, one for Lily, one for the question she knew I wasn't ready to ask. She slid a plate of pancakes across the counter to Lily without charging me. She said, "Whatever it is, we got time." I asked, "Do you still keep that prepaid phone in the drawer for folks that don't want to use their own?" She didn't blink. She said, "Thought about tossing it when we redid the menus," as if we were talking about syrup brands. Didn't. Turns out, I like the idea that a person could have a clean line in a messy day. She handed me the flip phone inside a brown paper bag like she was passing me a second chance. I called Kelsey. She's Lily's mom, my former daughter-in-law. They and Drew married too young, divorced too fast, and have spent the last 4 years learning how to be decent to each other for the sake of a child with good freckles and a quick mind. Kelsey picked up on the first ring. You can hear fear in a mother's hello. It lives between the words. I said, "Lily's with me. She's safe. I need you at the Bluebird if you can." She arrived in 6 minutes with damp hair and a sweatshirt pulled on inside out. She ran a hand down Lily's back and kissed both cheeks and laughed and cried at the same time, because that's what it sounds like when relief re-enters a room you didn't think it would. Then she looked at me, and what sat on her face was wonder and worry and the knowledge that I wouldn't have called unless something had snapped. She said, "Tell me." So I told her what Lily had told me. Kelsey's jaw clenched. "Gray folder," she said, tasting the words like something bitter. "She's mentioned a gray folder. Tessa keeps talking about getting the house in order. Drew told me you were touring a place this weekend." "Respite," I said, "just to try it out." Kelsey gave a humorless laugh. "Or paperwork to make it permanent." Marcia slid my coffee closer and leaned her elbows on the counter. She said, "People with stamps, that sounds like Paula Stewart. She does most of the mobile notarying around here. PTA tables, church bazaars, bill of sale on that junker I sold 3 years ago. Want me to text her, Ellie?" Ask if she's scheduled at my house tomorrow, I said. Tell her I'm awake and aware. Marcia's thumbs flew. 5 minutes later, the burner phone buzzed. Hi, Miss Harper. This is Paula. I am set for 9 a.m. at your address for a medical power of attorney change, a quick claim deed, and an advance directive. Should I still come? My skin went cold. A deed, a medical directive, and a power of attorney? As if I were planning to hand myself over like a set of keys? I texted back, Paula, it's Nora. Please hold. I need to understand what I'm signing. She replied almost instantly, Of course. FYI, I only notarize with valid ID and clear capacity. If anything feels off, I walk. If you want a statement later, I can do that. The tiniest smile found its way to my mouth. Paper trails talk, and sometimes the people who carry them do too. Marcia, I said, I need to make one stop. She put down the coffee pot hard enough to make the cups quiver. You're not going alone, she said. I'll lock the front and put the closed sign on even if it isn't. This place runs on 2 things, bacon and community. Community can wait while I drive my friend. Kelsey, I said, turning to her, I'll take Lily to my place and lock both locks. You text me every 10 minutes from that phone or I'm calling Ruiz. Sergeant Elena Ruiz has been the steady center of our town since before Lily was born. She grew up 2 streets over from me, went to the academy, came back with her hair cropped short and a jaw that could stop a bar fight with a look. I have seen her deliver bad news with gentleness and a speeding ticket with mercy. She is what you want between you and harm. Marcia drove. I watched the cul-de-sac appear like a set we both knew by heart. The split level glowed warm in the living room window. The plastic skeleton in the neighbor's yard slumped in a lawn chair like he'd had a long day. Something metallic tapped against the flagpole in the porch light breeze. My chest tightened. It is a strange thing to look at your own front door and feel like it belongs to someone else. 15 minutes, Marcia said, parking a block away. If you're not back, I'm calling Ruiz and then I'm calling the whole choir. Text Paula. Tell her to stall if anyone tries to push her earlier. The back door key slid in smooth. The kitchen smelled like apples and cinnamon, and something wrong. An antiseptic sweetness hovered under the spice. The island sat like a stage. On it lay a gray folder with sticky tabs blooming like post-it flowers. A mug steamed, the cinnamon darker than usual, the liquid cloudy at the rim. I didn't drink it. I leaned in and saw a dust on the counter near the mug. Pinkish. Powder fanned thin in half moon where the mug had been nudged. Next to it lay a bottle of antihistamines, the capsules cracked open, the halves arranged like pistachio shells. My heart didn't sink. It hardened. I opened the gray folder with hands that didn't shake. The first page, petition for emergency guardianship. The second, quitclaim deed, transfer of real property. The third, advance healthcare directive, primary agent Drew Harper, alternate agent Tessa Harper. Tucked in the pocket on the back side, something with telemedicine letterhead and a doctor's name I didn't recognize. Capacity statement, draft. The kind of paper that looks official until a lawyer squints at it. I slid the draft into my sweater. I took pictures of everything else with the burner phone because cameras tell the truth, people won't. In the reflection in the oven door, I saw a woman with gray at her temples and her mother's mouth and the kind of eyes that have watched too many kids cross too many streets. Those eyes looked tired. They also looked like they'd set themselves against a flood and decided they could hold. The door from the garage opened and closed. I heard the whisper of a coat on drywall, the hum of the refrigerator filling in the silence after a breath that wasn't mine. Ma, Drew called, too casual. You up? I forgot my... Oh! He stopped in the kitchen doorway the way a man stops when the story he's told himself doesn't match the scene in front of him. Tessa leaned in behind him, her smile lacquered bright like nail polish. You're early, she said, sweet. Tea's ready. I looked at my son first. My boy who lost his father too soon and married to fill a hole and worked double shifts to make up the difference. His hands were in his pockets. That's what he does when he's ashamed. That's what he did when he broke a neighbor's window at 10 and told me he didn't. I've lived long enough to spot shame when it stands in front of me and pretends to be tired. "What am I signing in the morning?" I asked. "Mom, you told me last week you forgot your pills 2 days in a row and you left the car running in the driveway." I turned back inside to grab Lily's lunchbox. Shame on me for multitasking. As for pills, I forgot after your father died too. Grief makes a sieve out of a brain. It doesn't hand you an eviction notice. Tessa's smile vaporized. "We're just trying to make sure you're provided for." She tapped the gray folder with one finger. "In writing." A knock sounded on the front door. Tessa moved toward the hallway, but she was a beat too slow. The door opened, and a voice warm as coffee and firm as oak said, "Evening." Sergeant Ruiz stood there with another officer at her shoulder. Marcia was a step behind them, arms crossed, mouth set. Ruiz took in the kitchen in one sweep like she was reading a paragraph out loud. Folder, mug, bottle, me. "We received a call about a possible welfare concern," she said, like we were all neighbors and this concerned offense height. "This is a family matter," Tessa said, mouth tight. "Those can be the trickiest," Ruiz said pleasantly. She looked at me. "Miss Harper, do you mind if I ask a few questions?" "Please," I said. Ruiz picked up the bottle with a pen and held it toward the light. "Antihistamines," she said. "Crushed doses can intensify sedation, especially in older adults. Not illegal by itself. In context, concerning. Who prepared this tea?" "I did," Tessa said, voice high. "It's chamomile." "It smells like cinnamon," Ruiz said, the smallest smile on her mouth. "And chamomile doesn't come in capsules. Mr. Harper, who scheduled a notary for tomorrow morning?" Drew swallowed. We thought it would be easier if Mom didn't have to drive to an office." "Easier for whom?" Ruiz asked, not unkindly. She turned to me. "Miss Harper, do you understand what those documents would do?" "Yes," I said. "They would give my son control of my body and my house, and they would make it very hard for me to say no to anything ever again. I do not consent." "Then no one is signing anything tonight," Ruiz said. "Mr. Harper, guardianship, if genuinely needed, is a court process, not a kitchen efficiency. It comes with evaluations, notice, and a hearing at the Warren County Courthouse. There are reasons for that. People deserve dignity, even when families are scared." Drew stared at the grout in the tile like it held an answer. I recognized that look. It's the one he wore at 16 when he'd overdrawn his first checking account and believed nobody could possibly love him enough to help him fix it. The difference now was that this wasn't a $35 fee. This was a plan dressed up as care. "Do you have somewhere you feel safe for the night?" Ruiz asked me. "I do," I said. "Good," she said. "We'll document what we saw and follow up. Miss Stewart," she glanced at the door. Paula stepped into the hallway like a deus ex notaria, her bag in hand, blouse crisp, face calm. "I'm withdrawing from the assignment. I will not notarize under duress. I've also seen a capacity letter draft from a telemedicine provider who never examined Miss Harper. In my professional opinion, this is an inappropriate use of my services. I can provide a statement." Tessa's mouth tightened until it disappeared altogether. Drew closed his eyes. Marcia reappeared behind Paula with the look of a woman who has long suspected she'd need to use her church voice outside of church, and is glad she practiced. We left. Ruiz walked me to the car and put a hand on my elbow like I might be the one to fall. Drew stood under the porch light with his hands empty and his face complicated. I have loved that face more than my own for 40 years. I have never wanted to slap it until that night. I didn't. I climbed into Marcia's sedan and let the bluebird carry me back to its blessed fluorescent cheer. Kelsey texted when we sat down. Lily was asleep in her old twin bed with the possum tucked under her chin. I set the burner phone on the table and stared at the gray flakes in the laminate until they pulled into a pattern that looked like a flock of birds. I don't know what I expected. I think some small, foolish part of me expected to wake up in my own bed in the morning, make eggs, and find a post-it on the gray folder that said, "Never mind, we came to our senses." Instead, Saturday dawned like a long hallway with all the doors closed. Paula texted first, "For your awareness, I get calls like this twice a month. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not. I'm sorry you're in the knot. If you need me to submit my observations to the court, I will." Marcia brewed a fresh pot and pressed my hand across the booth. She said, "You can sit here as long as you need. I already told Tammy to cover the lunch rush. The only thing you're paying for is pie if you eat more than 3 slices." I called an elder law attorney while the breakfast crowd thinned. Her name was Anita Vega. She was younger than my son, whip smart, and listened the way good people do, without playing with her pen or trying to finish my sentences. She said, "What you're describing is a pattern I see in 2 forms. There's panic protection. Kids are terrified of losing a parent, so they try to control every variable. Then there's predatory control. Someone consolidates power, usually with money attached. Sometimes it's both. Either way, it's not okay. If a petition is filed, we'll fight it. If one isn't yet, we'll prepare to slam the door if anyone tries." Can I bring my own papers on my timeline, powers of attorney I choose with people I trust?
"You not only can," she said, "you should. I'll draft them with the safeguards you want. Capacity defined by 2 physician evaluations, triggers that protect you while preserving your voice, and explicit language about where you want to live. You choose your agents. That's what autonomy looks like." When I hung up, everything felt a shade lighter. Not fixed, light. Sometimes that's the difference between despair and a plan. One phone call where someone names the path. By afternoon, the burner phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. "Mom," Drew said when I answered, "can we talk? Just us." I met him behind the diner, in the little strip of asphalt where teenagers hide to smoke and adults pretend not to see them. He looked wrung out. His hoodie was half-zipped, his hair a mess, his eyes lined like he hadn't slept in a week. "Tessa says you're turning Lily against us," he started, then trailed off because even as he said it, he could hear how ugly it sounded. "Lily told me your plan," I said. "She shouldn't have had to." He rubbed his face hard. "I'm drowning, Mom. The roof is 20 years old. The truck's on its last legs. Tessa's loans and Lily's braces and the price of everything. And my house solves that," I asked gently. "Hand me a pen and a sleepy tea and poof, all your problems go the way of the ring toss." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "We thought if we could get control, we could refinance. By telling a judge I can't make decisions, by drugging me so I won't argue. Son, that's not care. That's control with good PR." His shoulders sagged. He stared at the asphalt like maybe the cracks would spell out a better version of himself. "I didn't know about the pills," he said finally, voice low. "That was Tessa. She said it would keep things calm. Keeping things calm is a lullaby, not a crushed capsule." He looked at me then, full on, the way my boy used to look when he scraped his knee and wasn't sure if he was allowed to cry. "We filed," he said. "The hearing is Monday. If I pull it back, it's like admitting I lied." "Then tell the truth," I said. "Tell the judge you panicked. I'll bring proof." He laughed once, bleak. "What proof?" "Enough," I said. "A notary with the spine, a sergeant with the camera, a little girl's voice." He closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. It's not enough, I know. But I'm sorry. Be sorrier to your daughter. Start there. Sunday crept past like a cat. Kelsey kept Lily busy with pancakes and glitter glue and a movie on the couch. I stayed semi-hidden at the Bluebird, where Marcia knows how to make a person feel invisible without making them feel unseen. People came and went. Some saw me, waved, and moved along. Some didn't. Mason is kind that way. Gossip lasts until people remember they have lives. Monday morning smelled like bleach and coffee. Court always smells like bleach and coffee. The Warren County Courthouse is only 2 stories, but the ceilings are high enough to make you feel like you might float. In the hallway, Paula stood with her bag and a stack of notes, every inch of her a civics lesson. Sergeant Ruiz nodded at me like we were neighbors at the mailbox. Marcia pressed a Tupperware of blueberry muffins into my hands as if sugar could tip justice. For once, I didn't argue. Probate court had a fan that clicked like a metronome. The judge was a small woman with gray hair pulled into a bun that made her look like a librarian you trust with your secrets. She peered over her readers and called our case, and just like that, my family became a story file with the number on it. Drew's attorney stood first. He had a soft sigh he kept inside his opening sentences, the way some men keep a peppermint in their pocket. "Your Honor," he said, "we are seeking emergency guardianship due to Miss Harper's cognitive decline and unsafe behaviors. We have documentation." My attorney rose like a blade slipping clean from its sheath. "Your Honor," she said, "we will show that Miss Harper pays her bills, cooks safely, drives without incident, and volunteers weekly at the public library. We will also show evidence that the petitioners attempted to obtain a deed and medical directive on sedation with the notary scheduled at the home, a doctored capacity letter, and a plan to minimize Miss Harper's ability to object." The judge raised her eyebrows. "Proceed." Paula went first. She didn't need to be dramatic. "I was booked to notarize 3 documents," she said clear. "When I texted Miss Harper to confirm, it became obvious she did not understand or consent. I refused the assignment. I also saw an electronic capacity letter generated by a telemedicine provider in another state that had not examined Miss Harper. In my professional judgment, this is not how we protect autonomy." Kelsey spoke, eyes bright. "Nora reads with Lily every night," she said. "She labels the dance bag and remembers the teachers' birthdays. The only thing she loses is patience when she has to repeat herself to people who should know better." A laugh rolled through the room before the judge tapped her pen to quiet it. I didn't want Lily in the courtroom. I didn't want her anywhere near adults who had made such a mess. So I let her voice come without her body. Anita played a 1-minute recording from the school iPad. It was nothing more than a whisper, the words that had rewired my weekend. "Gran, don't drink the cinnamon tea. Don't sign the gray folder. She told Daddy it's game day and you won't fuss if you're sleepy." Silence landed heavy and stayed. That's the thing about a small voice telling the truth in a room where everyone is armed with paperwork. It slices through paperwork like it's tissue. The judge took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Harper, do you wish to continue this petition?" Drew looked at me. It wasn't long. A second. 2. Then he looked back at the judge and said as if his throat were made of gravel, "I'm sorry, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Miss Harper, the petition is dismissed," she said. "You retain full rights to your person and property. Given what I've heard, I recommend you meet with counsel to draft your chosen powers of attorney with safeguards. Mr. Harper, Miss Tessa Harper, I will be referring the matter of potential fraud and attempted undue influence to the prosecutor for review. I also strongly recommend family counseling. When the gavel tapped, 2 light beats that sounded like a door closing without a slam, I exhaled something I hadn't known I was holding. We walked into the hallway and everything felt both loud and muffled, like the world after a snowfall. Drew approached me slowly, the way a boy approaches a principal when he knows he's wrong. "I don't know how to fix it," he said, and there was my child at last, not a man hiding behind a folder. "I do know I want to try." "Start with Lily," I said. "She needs your honesty more than she needs your defense." He nodded, color rising in his cheeks. Tessa didn't say a word. She stared at a spot on the opposite wall like there was an invisible crack she could pry open and climb through. Whether she eventually did or not wasn't my business anymore. In the weeks that followed, we did the slow work only boring people on the outside talk about. Anita drafted what we needed. She sat with me and asked hard questions and wrote down my answers as if I were a person, not an inconvenience, not a check mark. "Who do you want to make healthcare decisions if you cannot?" "Kelsey." "Who is the alternate?" Paula would have smiled at that. Anita wrote down my sister Ruth 2 states over with explicit instructions about how capacity would be determined only after 2 physicians examined me. "What are your wishes around living arrangements?" "To stay in my home as long as possible with in-home support I choose, with my church as a backup network." "Who has copies of these documents?" "Me, my attorney, my chosen agents. Not Reddit, not the kitchen counter, not the bottom of a gray folder someone else pens for me." We attached the photographs from that night. We filed what needed filing. The papers were chosen by me, not to me. On Tuesdays, Lily and I volunteer at the library story hour. She does the funny voices better than I do. If you put her in front of toddlers with a book about a bear who's lost his hat, she can keep them still for 20 minutes without bribes. One week, the librarian asked if I'd like to stay and stuff craft packets for the week after Halloween. I said yes and stuck on labels until my fingers smelled like glue. Drew started counseling. I know because he told me the way a man tells his mother something he isn't proud of but wants her to applaud. It's at church. They call it a money class and a feelings class, and I hate both words, but it's something. He apologized to Lily, not once but 3 times, the last time without tears, just a solid grown man telling a child he made a wrong choice and will make better ones. She listened with her knees pulled up to her chest and her hair falling in her face, and when he finished, she said, "Okay, but you have to ask Gran before you put anything in a folder with tabs." He nodded like she'd set the terms of a treaty. Tessa moved out. I heard through 3 different neighbors and 1 cashier she'd found a condo 2 towns over near her sister. She left a plant on my porch. It was thriving when I tossed it in the backyard. I've prayed for her twice. I'm not in a hurry. Some nights I still wake at 3 and lie there listening to the furnace click on, thinking about how close I came to signing something that would have swept me downstream. Then I hear beside that the memory of the ring toss and the tiny voice that said, "Don't sign." I say a thank you into the dark like a bedtime prayer and fall back asleep. Marcia, being Marcia, turned my mess into a community service project. She put a sign by the register, "Know Your Rights, Elder Autonomy Night." The first Tuesday after court, the diner filled with seniors and their kids and people who might someday be both at once. Paula stood at the front and explained notarizing as if it were witchcraft and she was there to separate real spells from fakes. Anita talked about powers of attorney like seatbelts, easy to put on, hard to explain after the crash. Sergeant Ruiz explained undue influence in a voice that could have knocked a nail into a wall. People asked questions with fear under them, the kind that sound like, how do I protect my mama if she needs it without turning into the kind of person who thinks protection means power?
Help preserves choice, Ruiz said. Control removes it. If you can't tell the difference, stop and ask someone to draw the line for you before you do damage. We passed out pamphlets and slices of pie, and by the end of the night, the tip jar overflowed with bills and notes with phone numbers. I walked home under a sky so clear you could see the dots of planes on their way to other lives, and thought that maybe my town was learning something the easy way because I had learned it the hard. I joined the morning walking group because the UPS driver who leads it told me she knew every shortcut in Mason and could get me to the grocery without crossing a busy street. We circle the park 3 times, talk about our knees and the price of eggs, and how the high school should fix the potholes in the teacher lot. One woman said her son wants her to move to Arizona. She doesn't want to. I gave her Anita's card and told her to write down what she wants and give copies to people she trusts. She squeezed my hand like I'd given her a passport. At Thanksgiving, I made 2 pies and didn't invite Tessa. We held hands at the table and took turns saying one thing we were grateful for that didn't cost money. Lily said, grandmas. Drew said, second chances, and looked like he meant it. I said, small voices. On Christmas Eve, we sat in the pew we always sit in, left side, 3 from the back, the hymnals with the rip on the corner. The sanctuary glowed with candles and hope. When it came time to pass the flame, Lily held her steady and leaned to light the candle of the elderly man next to her, who can't hear the sermon anymore, but still hums all the carols. Careful, I whispered as wax dripped. She looked up and smiled and rolled her eyes like I'd told her to breathe. I wish I could tell you it's all tidy now. It isn't. Some mornings, Drew looks at me with a face that says he wants me to forgive him faster than he deserves. Some days I do. Some days I make him bring me my mail and walk around the house with me, fixing things he broke 10 years ago to remind him where we stand. He's learning. Learning isn't quick. It shouldn't be. The people who want quick are the same ones who sell shortcuts to a place you don't want to go. When I finally sat down with Anita to sign my papers, I wore my Sunday sweater and brought Lily because I wanted her to see what it looks like when a woman writes down her own name and chooses the people who will speak for her if she cannot. Anita slid the forms across the desk and pointed where to sign. My hand didn't shake. When we finished, Anita smiled and said, "Feels a little like buckling in, doesn't it?" "Yes," I said, "not because I'm going to crash, but because I drive on roads where other people do." In the car on the way home, Lily leaned her head against the window and watched the cornfields tunnel past. "Gran, can we have a code word in case I ever need to tell you something important and there are people around?" "We already do," I said. "It's pancake promise. If you say it, I know to pay attention. If I say it, it means I need you to tell me the truth, even if you're scared." She considered. "Good," she said. "I like pancakes." I made one more change nobody asked me to do. I hung a small framed piece of paper by the kitchen phone. It said in big letters, "Help deserves consent." Under it, I wrote 3 steps in my neat print. 1, ask. 2, explain. 3, listen. It wasn't art, but it was a promise. It was also a warning for anyone who tried to turn my kitchen into a contract factory. In January, the Bluebird hosted another night, this one called Boundaries for Beginners, because Marcia loves a theme. Paula brought examples of how to say no without apologizing, which sounds like it belongs on a pillow until you need it. Ruiz brought a handout that said, if you need a notary to show up at 9 a.m. so someone doesn't fuss, don't. People laughed, people sighed, people wrote down phone numbers like they were putting bricks in a wall. By spring, the roof was replaced with money that did not come from my house. Drew learned to pack his pride inside the toolbox where it belonged and ask for help like a man instead of a boy. Lily lost a tooth and gave me the coin the tooth fairy left because she said the tooth had belonged to both of us, and that was fair. I pretended not to cry and put the coin in a jar labeled library late fees, even though I haven't had one in a decade. Do I sometimes think of Tessa? Of course. I think of her buying the crushed caps like they were spelling the letters HELP more than HUSH. I think of the kind of fear that makes a person believe agency is the enemy. I think of the way women can direct their hunger at another woman because the world taught them there is only one seat at the table marked power. Then I pray for fewer tables like that.
One more thing happened that I should tell you because it sits in the center of how this all holds together. In March, Lily ran in from school with a paper crown on her head and a certificate in her hand. "Gran," she said, breathless, "I got an award for being a truth teller." "What did you do?" I asked, sitting down because I have learned that good news comes in on knees sometimes. "I told Miss Oliver that Henry was coloring on the rug because he thought it was paper," she said. "He didn't get in trouble. She moved the paper. She said I helped." I put my hands on her shoulders and I looked her in the eyes. "That's exactly what you did for me," I said. "You told the truth gentle enough that I could hear it and strong enough that it could hold me." She beamed. "Pancake promise," she said, and we laughed because there are code words, and then there is what happens when a child becomes the kind of person who will whisper what matters even when her voice shakes. Every story has a moment that becomes the point. Mine isn't the gavel or the folder or the way the tea smelled wrong. It's standing in the parking lot under a string of paper ghosts and feeling the smallest hand squeeze mine and realizing how much faith it takes to be believed before the proof arrives. I can talk all day about attorneys and notaries and sergeants, and please do get them, call them, write down their numbers. But if you ask me what saved me, I will say the tiny voice that pulled me back from the brink and the decision to treat that voice like the truth, not a nuisance. In case you're wondering, I still keep cinnamon sticks in the kitchen. I'm not afraid of spices. I brew chamomile some nights and don't think about capsules at all. I live in my house with my books and my photos and the grocery list I write in a hand my husband used to tease me about because it looks more like a lesson plan than a list. When I pass the counter where the gray folder sat, I touch the edge, not because I'm checking for powder, but because I remember how quickly a kitchen can become a courtroom and how lucky I am that mine became a classroom instead. If you're listening to this in a car or at a sink or with your hands full of a life that feels heavier than you planned, here is my wish for you. May your help come from people who ask before they act. May your papers say what you want them to say. May your children be brave enough to whisper, and may you be humble enough to hear. And if the day ever comes when someone shows up at your door with a stamp and a mug and a smile that feels like a mask, may you have a diner that knows your name, a sergeant with a camera, a notary with a spine, a lawyer with a pen, and a small voice, maybe your own, that says, clear as church bells, don't sign. That was the beginning of my second life. It didn't come with balloons or a cake. It came with a flip phone in a paper bag and the sound of a child telling me she trusted me to be wise. The rest, roofing quotes and library cards and a walking group that doesn't judge you for needing to rest at the bench by the dog park. That's just the shape a safe life takes when you build it slow and steady, one boundary at a time. I used to tell the kids in my office back when I wore a badge that said secretary and knew the combination to the petty cash that late is better than never if you've got your reasons. What I know now is that boundaries are better than apologies, that help without consent is a cage, that control dressed in care is still control, that a gray folder with tabs belongs to the person whose name is on the deed, not to anyone who thinks a signature is just a formality. When Lily grows up
And she will, faster than I want. She'll be a woman who doesn't drink anything that tastes wrong and doesn't sign anything she hasn't read and doesn't confuse louder with truer. She'll call me to say the car makes a funny noise and I'll tell her to roll the window down so I can listen. She'll come over with a loaf of bread she didn't need right and we'll eat it anyway. She'll tell me she loves me through gritted teeth on the days I make her do the hard right thing instead of the easy wrong thing. If I'm lucky, I'll be here to hear all of it. If I'm not, the papers will say what I want them to say. The people I chose will carry out those wants. Lily will read them one day and realize that autonomy isn't selfish. It's the way love protects without pretending it owns. I didn't sign the gray folder. I signed my own. And if there's anything I want that to mean, it's this. No one gets to draw your life in pencil and erase you from the page you wrote with your own hand. You are not a form. You are a person. Help should feel like a hand, not a pen. And if you ever forget, listen for the smallest voice in the room. It's usually telling the truth.